For much of the year, Vegas Golden Knights' greatest strength was their goalie room. Currently, they rank 10th in goals against average, 11th in lowest shots allowed against, and 9th in save percentage. They've had a great year, but in recent weeks, we've started to see an earthquake forming underneath the goalie room of the Vegas Golden Knights, and a lot of things have begun going against the Golden Knights. Not only has this great room lost their starter, and we're going to be going through all this, but they've lost their backup to their backup, and their backup to their backup to their backup. There's been so much trauma that's occurred to this room this year, and it's really starting to worry me. So let's break down everything that's kind of went down in this goalie room, and do they need to, what can they do to prepare for the rest of the season? So not only was the case that Robin Lehner, the starting goalie at the end of last year, injured, needed surgery, and missed the entirety of this year, you see Logan Thompson step up, who is the current starting goalie for this team. And he did great for the roster, but now becoming an all-star goalie and playing at a top level, he goes down with injury. He ends up with a lower body injury. He's been out for quite some time and was labeled week to week when the injury did occur. Now, we have seen no improvement. Honestly, there's no update. There's really no timeline on when Logan Thompson could be returning. He went down with his injury on February 13th, and of course labeled week to week. That's anywhere from about 2 weeks to a month, I'd say, which means that there's a chance we could see him coming back in the coming weeks. But big time injury, low body injury, he couldn't even walk himself off of the ice. He was writhing in pain on the ground. It didn't look great. Then you have Laurent Brossoit step in for Logan Thompson to be that new backup until he's able to return. Now, Brossoit came into Vegas and he looked very, very good, and he potentially had one of the greatest saves of the year just a couple of games back. But sadly and oddly, funnily enough, Brossoit also potentially came down with a long-term injury. He came down with a lower body injury similar to Logan Thompson, and although he was listed as day-to-day, he was then moved to the injured reserve and potentially might have re-aggravated the injury that happened during this offseason, and I believe he needed surgery on it. And that's now good news. And being on injured reserve, that means he's going to be out at least 7 days from when he was put on reserve. That, of course, being yesterday, so he's going to be out until the 7th or the 8th. And depending on how that plays out, it could be even longer. Now, that leaves you in a spot where, once again, you have to call up another goalie from the Henderson Silver Knights, this time being Michael Hutchinson. Now, Hutchinson has not played a game for the Golden Knights yet this year, and hopefully he's able to stay healthy, but now you're all the way to your fourth string goalie. Not only that, but Adin Hill, who is your normal backup, and although he is currently healthy, he was also dealing with an injury just a while back and actually just barely returned to play. On 2/18, he received a bump, as Bruce Cassidy mentioned it being, played the full game and then had the injury occur, ended up missing from 2/18. He was not able to return to play to be the backup until the 25th of last month, missing a full week of play. That's a big time loss. We have seen goalies 1 through 3 all come down with injury already this year. And, that's just since the All-Star break. That puts Vegas in what certainly isn't a good scenario. You have your 3 goalies who have been dealing with injuries, and most of the time you come back from injury, you're not full strength for at least a while, and there's a chance of re-aggravating the injury. So let's kind of go through what scenarios this means for Vegas and what they can do to provide some safety in that. First, let's start with worst case scenario. Let's get the bad out of the way. Worst case scenario, Brossoit, who is injured right now, did re-aggravate this injury and is out longer term, putting Michael Hutchinson as your backup for a good share of time. Logan Thompson's injury lasts a little bit longer than the 2 weeks that maybe people were hoping for, and potentially misses the remainder of this whole month that just started. That leaves you with Adin Hill and Michael Hutchinson. Hutchinson, we don't know how he's going to play, so we'll leave it at that. But Adin Hill also was coming back from injury. Adin Hill potentially could be forced in a spot where he has to play a whole lot of games to keep Vegas in the fold for, that top 3 spot in the Pacific Division. And maybe he's not in full health yet. That could lead to him dealing with injuries maybe not to hold him out, but isn't able to play at full level. That's worst case scenario, and that's something I hope to see, and I don't think it's going to happen because that's just too many dominoes falling for it to occur. Now, best case scenario, which is what we're all hoping for, Adin Hill's injury was not bad, and he's already 100%, and he's able to play and play successfully while Logan Thompson is returning. Laurent Brossoit is able to return after the 7-day hiatus and is able to be back at the level that he was, although not great. He was, at this current moment, through 3 games, having the best stats based on the 3 goalies that have played so far. So if he can return and play to that long enough for Logan Thompson to return, that's a great sight. Hopefully Hutchinson only has to play 1, maybe 2 games before that occurs and does well enough to keep the Vegas in a good spot there. And lastly, of course, in this best case scenario, Logan Thompson's able to return to play in another week or 2 and immediately returns to his all-star level. Best and worst case scenario. And that's a lot of speculation, so let's talk about what can Vegas do to create a little bit of a safety net for their goalie room. Now first, put your goalies in the best position to win. Of course, that's pretty obvious. Get the offense rolling, get some goals so that you're not worried about if 1 or 2 squeeze in there. That's, of course, a big factor. You need to score more goals than you allow. Pretty simple, at least on paper. Limit the shots on net. This defense, I think, is still number 1 in the league at shots against, or at least top 10. They're doing really, really good. Keep that up. That's going to lead to less goals. And finally, pay attention to the opposing team and who their goalie is and just match it. Do your best. If they're putting in their backup, you put in your backup to rest Adin Hill, or maybe vice versa. If you're going against a really, really good goalie, I don't really want to say this, but if you're going against that and your offense still isn't rolling, maybe put in your backup, fold, that way you have your starting goalie rested at this moment, Adin Hill, when you're going against some worser teams, and you can win that situation and just stay around 500 because they are currently the number 1 seed in the Pacific. If you can stay close to that, that's going to be good news. Now, another thing that the Vegas can do for their safety net is if injuries don't recover quick, don't rush them back. Don't rush your players back. If Logan Thompson isn't back to full health after 2 or 3 weeks, don't rush him back re-aggravated, or just make it so he's not 100% because the playoffs are more important. You put yourself in a really good spot. If you stay around 500, you're pretty much guaranteed to make the playoffs. Rest them extra if you have to. Adin Hill, if he's not 100% yet, maybe throw Hutchinson in, take a few game losses if you have to, and let Adin Hill get back to 100%. Let Brossoit sit extra if he needs to. Make sure your goalies are 100%. That is the most important thing here. You don't want to rush somebody back and deal with those injuries again later in the playoffs when it's most important. And again, next thing here, if these injuries do occur, look internally first. Of course, you've moved up Hutchinson. You don't know how he's going to play. You moved up Brossoit, who looked very, very good, but you don't have to stop there. If Hutchinson maybe isn't working the way you want, or you just want to take a little bit of risk, pull some more guys up. Of course, you have Jari Patera, which I'm probably butchering that name. He's shown a good amount, especially last year, but even this year, I haven't watched Henderson Silver Knights a whole bunch, but be willing to move him up. I see a lot of potential in Jari. I think that could work very, very well. If you be willing to move him up, be willing to move up whomever the now backup goalie for Henderson is. Sorry that I don't know the name there. Be willing to do those moves if need be. And lastly, be willing to make a trade. I know Vegas mentioned that they weren't in the market to trade for a goalie, but that was before all these injuries occurred. They said that before Logan Thompson even got injured. And since then, you've had 2 other goalies get hurt. Be in the market to make that trade. Now, you don't have to, but be prepared. Have something set where you're like, hey, if it reaches this amount, take it. Whether that's a high-level goalie and the market's low enough that you're willing to take that risk and don't have to worry about cap situations, whether that's just to help you now or in the playoffs, be willing to do that. But also, maybe it's okay to take a risk on, a guy that either hasn't performed, is young, or just is a backup level goalie, but you need him now. Be willing to make a trade, big or small, for a goalie if these injuries do occur long term, because that's really, really important to put yourself in a spot where you have a safety net. If worst case scenario does occur, you at least have some support and can maintain a playoff level of play. I think that's really, really important for the team. But with all this being said, with the Knights in a really, really tight spot in a goalie room that is in shambles right now, there's a whole lot of questions that's going on. With so many possibilities that occurred, it's a bunch of speculation. And all that's happening, you got to hope for the best. But you still got to be prepared for the worst. But what do you guys think? Do you think all these injuries are going to subside and it's going to be fine? Do you think there's going to be some more long-term implications surrounding this? And does Vegas need to make a trade for a goalie at the deadline coming on Friday? What do you guys all think about that? If you enjoy this content, please like and subscribe. It truly means the world to me. And as always, I hope to touch something today. Hope it made you smile. Hope it made you laugh. Something really important to me. Affects someone's day in a great way, because every single day can be a good day if we all just put in the effort. And as always, you guys all be safe out there.